Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to this week's Weekly D, where I'm talking to the lovely David, aka Blumineck, about his specialist Instagram page and how he has created this super niche brand. I think it's a super important subject to talk about because lots of people ask me how we kind of think of what sort of content we want to create, and what David is creating is something super niche. David actually creates content for pole dancing, Dungeons and Dragons, and archery, and he manages to blend them all together, and it's super cool. So we talk a lot to him about how he decided to come about doing content like this, how often he's posting, and how he managed to get the following that he has now. So without further ado, this is the Weekly D, because honey, if you ain't getting your D on the daily, you better at least be getting it once on the weekly.
Weekly D. If you're not getting any and you want some tea, then come and join Dan up on the Weekly D. It's the Weekly D.
Hey David, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. David, aka Blumineck of Instagram. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. It's amazing to have you. I'm really excited to talk to you because I feel like you're going to really provide some value to this chat that we're having on social media and stuff. But before we get started on the social media talk, I just wanted, because we haven't had you on the podcast before, I wanted you to have like an opportunity to just sort of like introduce yourself, tell people who you are, where you're from, what you do. So yeah, here's your time. Tell us about you.
Okay, cool. Weirdly, I'm not that good at this stuff. I've not done podcasts before. But my name's David. I do a lot of social media stuff. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Tumblr as Blumineck. I mostly post about archery, pole dancing, and Dungeons and Dragons. Not always all at the same time, but occasionally all at the same time. I live in Leeds at the minute. I teach at a pole studio there. And yeah, I did. What else? I've moved around the country a bit. I've been at a few studios. That's me.
Nice. And so when you started pole dancing, was you already into the like D&D stuff and like all of the like archery, or did this all kind of like slowly sort of come up as you got into pole, or was it all of it at once?
No, it's been dribs and drabs. I started archery when I was about 15, and then I started pole when I was about 20. But I didn't put them together until a couple of years ago. And the D&D came only, I think, in 2020. So that's a bit more recent.
Nice.
But yeah, I started pole at uni. I had a friend that did it, and she saw me climbing around in some trees and was like, you should do pole dancing. And I'd seen the occasional video at that point, and it was I thought I'd give it a go. So I turned up, and then I never left.
So, and you have a child, don't you? Let's talk about that. So you have a kid, and I found this crazy because I remember seeing all your videos, and if you were to look at your videos, you wouldn't even think that you are like old enough to have a child. You look like a child. Is that bad to say that? But you look so young. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 31.
You look not a day over like 22. You look like a child. It's so annoying. Why do you look so young? What's your secret?
I'll take that while I can. Good skincare. At the moment, I'm not getting enough sleep, but I used to, and I think that helps.
Child life, having children, I guess. So, how did you meet your partner? How did you guys like get to know each other and stuff?
Oh, we've been together since we were both 17. So we met not at school, we were at different schools, but in the same town. So we met at the random point. I don't know if every town has this, but there's usually a point in the town where the schools just randomly converge after school. So that was us. We met at the Fountain in Lancaster.
Oh, that's so nice. And does she do pole dancing or no?
Not anymore. She used to. When our daughter was born, my wife took a long break from it, and she's one of those people that when she's taken a break from something and she comes back, she doesn't want to do it anymore. So she does other stuff now.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It must be really hard to like get back into pole after having a child. I can only like imagine how hard that is. So yeah, I totally get that. So tell me a little bit more about how you got into pole dancing and stuff. So it was through the uni, and now you teach. It's Leeds pole. Is it called Leeds pole dancing?
Yeah,
It's
Leeds
Jacob's
Pole Dance
studio.
Studio. Yeah, it's Jacob's
Yes.
studio. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you like get to like that stage of your like pole career when you were like teaching and stuff? Because I remember you when and I hope this doesn't insult you. This is a compliment actually. I remember when you kind of were first sort of starting and you were a little bit messy at the time, and since then you've kind of gotten really, really good, a lot tidier. You've really picked up your own style and stuff. How has that journey been for you?
Well, so I started out because I just wanted a new hobby. Basically, I wanted something physical that used some of the. Basically, I wanted to do gymnastics, but it was at uni. And if you join gymnastics at uni and you've not done it as a kid, you're not going to stand a chance of getting anywhere. So I went to do pole because it was similar but different, and I was also trying to branch out a bit. I'd been to a high school that was an all boys school, and the only sports they did were sports that I hated, like cricket and rugby. So trying to do something a bit less stereotypical was kind of
Right.
nice. It felt good at the time, but I was still and still am in a lot of ways quite stereotypical. And I wanted to learn tricks and I wanted to do the moves, and I wasn't too bothered about the dance. So at the beginning, that was it. I was just learning tricks. I wasn't really stringing them together, like you say. It was messy. It was just, oh, I've done the thing. I can cross it off and move on to the next thing.
I
But
find that men are all a bit like that though. I feel like, you know, I was at a stage where I was like that too. Like I feel like I was just like, I remember specifically I was like Phoenix and like Fungi. I was like, I want to do Fungi, and then when I got it, I was like, nailed it. Never really tidied it up until later down in my pole career. You know, it was just that whole thing of like you're just like, I don't know if that's just a bit of a bloke thing. You're just like, yeah, fucking want to nail the Fungi, you nail it, and then you're like, yeah, got it. Do you know what I mean? We just don't give a shit about how tidy it looks. I feel like girls are different to that.
it probably is. I think it's like a mirror of the same thing that I see in some people, often in female students, where there's some people just want to hit the move, and there's some people that want to get the lovely pose for Instagram pictures.
Yeah,
And not everyone is in either of those categories, but I feel like they're kind of mirrors of each other. One's about getting it looking perfect, but for a second, and one of them's about just like hitting those beats and then ignoring it. So I was at that stage for a while. I think the big I'd never done any kind of dance. I never saw myself as being able to dance. Clubs did and still do freak me out. So
I'm the same. I'm not a club person at all. I think people think it's really funny. These personas that we perceive online, I feel like they. If you were to look at my Instagram and maybe just like follow me for a while, you'd probably think I'm like a proper party animal. Like maybe I want to have loads of fun and stuff because I like to joke and make people laugh. But just because I like to make people laugh doesn't mean that I'm a fun person. I'm actually a very boring person.
I feel
I'm
like
like
there's a lot
people
of
like
correlation.
people are like, oh, we'll go out drinking when you come to workshops. I'm like, oh, no, please. I don't want to do that. and people are like, oh, we thought you were going to be a proper party animal. I literally arrived at a workshop the other day, and I must have arrived at like 9. She was like, do you want to go like partying or something? I was like, no, I want to go to my hotel. I want to sleep. They were like, oh. They were like, we thought you'd want to go like parties. I was like, no, I'm so not like that. But I mean, you mentioned something a second ago that I want to go back to because it's a really important. It kind of is staying on the social media subject, but actually it's something I'm really intrigued by. You mentioned about you've got those students who kind of want to get like a trick, and then you've got the people who just want like a cute post for Instagram. I feel like as an industry we really have turned into that. I don't know what you feel like when you're teaching your classes, but I feel such a pressure for my students to leave with a cute picture because if they don't, they haven't got their Instagram photo that day, and oh, like I feel like there's such a pressure. Like, where do you think this is coming from? You think this is just coming from social media pressures to be popular online?
I think that's more or less most of it. Yeah, like everyone's on social media now, and with pole being, it is very visual. It's a very aesthetic activity, and probably for most people, part of why they got into it was seeing posts on social media. I mean, it was the same for me. It was just with different social media. I'd seen videos of just a few interesting and cool routines that had been in the kind of the the pole sports competitions and things like that that had kind of made me reevaluate what I thought of it. But yeah, if you're just browsing through Instagram, you keep seeing all these cute pictures of pole, and that's why you want to get into it, then that's what you want to get out of it.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing. It gives you a motivation, but like you say, you can lose something of the rest of it.
Absolutely. I think it kind of, there's just a different focus now. And yeah, I feel the same as you. I'm like, is that a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Like, I mean, actually, for the studios, I would say in some ways it's actually better for us because if people do get a photo, they're going to post. And if they post, it's going to promote your studio. So actually, it's kind of free promotion in that sense. But it wasn't like that when I started. Was it like that when you started? Because definitely, but social media wasn't as big when I started. So it's way bigger now. Like, what was it like when you started?
It was starting that way, but most people wouldn't just have cameras out in classes all the time. I mean, I didn't actually have a picture or a video of me doing pole until I've been doing it for a few months at that point.
Right.
And partly that was me because that just wasn't what I did back then. I still don't really. I have to remind myself to record stuff, but that's, yeah, it was starting to get that way, but not as much. Instagram was not as big and people didn't do the same stuff with Facebook. But definitely in the first few years that I was doing it, Instagram got a lot bigger. And I feel like Instagram is where pole found its place in terms of social media popularity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was definitely kicking off around that time.
I mean, when I started, we could only post, I think it was like 15-second videos. And before that, we could only post photos. So it was like photos first, then very shortly afterwards, I remember they introduced like videos and it was like, you can only post 15 seconds. And I remember because all the pole dancers were like speeding up their videos so that they could post their combo in 15 seconds. And, it was such a funny time to look back to, but pole really wasn't like that when I started. Because when I first started, I didn't get any videos or photos because it just wasn't a thing. So when you see these challenges, we're like, oh, post your first pole photo. Mine is of me doing a handspring because I'd already been doing it for quite a long time. And it was that whole, because when I go back, the earliest photo I can find is me doing like, I think, maybe an Aisha. But yeah, it wasn't me doing like a chair spin or anything like that. So how long ago did you say you started?
What year is it now? It was about, 10, 11 years now? I was about 20.
Right, okay, yeah. Yeah, so mine was like 2008, so it would have been a few years before that. But yeah, it was back long enough that social media maybe wasn't what it is now. What do you think of how it is now? Do you like it?
Yes and no. I mean,
what don't you like about it?
The pressure is, I think, the hard thing about it. I think it doesn't suit everybody. It doesn't work for everybody. And
do you feel that
sometimes
pressure?
As an instructor in a class, I'm sometimes like I try to give everybody a few moments at the end to have cameras out and to get their pictures and clips if they want to. But it can feel a bit weird when there's just like a video recording of basically the whole session going on in a corner. And I'm trying to talk to somebody else about their technique or something. And I'm conscious that it's going to be on someone's camera. But
I don't allow that. Do you allow people to do that, to like record the whole class?
Not usually intentionally. I'll let people record their stuff. If they want to record what they're doing, then that's fine.
Sure.
But not as just like almost like the podcast recording of the class is a bit, not as keen on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't let someone do that. Just, I know it seems odd, but like if they're filming the whole thing, like they're probably not really concentrating enough, and that's probably a bit of an issue for me. So I think that's more the reason for me. But also as well, it's the whole thing of like, don't know, that something doesn't feel right about a whole thing being recorded. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. Just something doesn't feel right about it for me. I don't know why.
It's possibly a generational thing because I know a lot of younger folks who are at uni, for example, will record their whole lecture at the same time as attending it, and then they'll be able to watch it back and stuff like that, which feels like you need a lot of phone memory for. But
yeah, it's funny actually. Now you say it like that, I'm like, actually, that's a great idea. Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like in a lecture, there's talking constantly. So you probably do need that like video backup. But I feel with poll, there's that period where everyone's just practicing. I don't know whether that needs to be recorded. Do you know what I mean? But then, yeah, I guess, yeah, it's a tough one. And I think it's also that issue of consent of other people being in the video.
That's the hard bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what if people are in the background, like, and they don't want to be in the background of your video? But then you could also say, well, if they're not intending on using that video for anything, but yeah, I don't know. That's actually a conversation I do see happen a lot, and I never really know how I feel about it. It's that whole thing of like, well, you know, well, if everyone's kind of like consented to it, it's like fine. It just takes that one person to be like, oh, I don't want to be in any videos, and then it's like, fuck, now what do we do?
Yeah.
It's a difficult
I feel
one.
like the consent has to take priority, whatever else is going on.
Yeah, I used to actually have a student who didn't ever want to be recorded, and we just used to put her on a pole that was just out of view of everyone else's cameras. So she used to work fine, but yeah, it's definitely changed a lot. Whereas it's funny because that was never an issue when I first started pole, so now it just seems like such an odd issue. But yeah, let's get talking about social media. So you are into Dungeons and Dragons, you're into archery, and you're into pole dancing, and you have blended all three of these into what is possibly the most niche Instagram profile I've ever seen in my life. Like, I wanted to talk to you about it because I feel like some people are too afraid to go down the niche route of being like, oh, I want to do specifically, I don't know, like cats, me pole dancing with my cats, for example. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's your, like, did you have any like reservations when you first started as to whether you wanted to do something so niche?
I think so. My social media journey has mostly been fumbling around in the dark and running into things by accident. So I never really had a plan that I was going to combine everything all together at once. It just kind of happened. Not by accident. I did it on purpose, but it was never intended to specifically be like a whole profile thing. I did a one-off video once where I did a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons classes doing archery in just different styles of archery. And that really, really kicked off. And so a bit later I was like, well, I've got these other hobbies, so why don't I do Dungeons and Dragons classes doing pole?
Yeah.
And then it became a D&D account for a while, and that was kind of what was going on. I was just doing different things. But then nobody was responding as well as they did when it was the pole or the archery. So then I did a few more, and I think the first time I combined all three of them was I'd revisited the classes doing the archery thing, and one of the classes, the bard, is the showman character. So I did some archery on the pole for that. I'd only done it once or twice before, but I did it for that video, and it massively took off. It was a hugely viral thing, especially compared with anything else I was posting at the time. So it kind of showed that people, and most of the comments were about that bit. So it kind of showed that people were interested in that kind of thing. So I've made some changes over the years, and every now and then I'll go down one side of things more than the rest, and then I'll switch back and things. I'm kind of a little bit reactive. I follow the endorphins. If people are really liking something, I tend to go down that route for a while, which I
guess makes sense, doesn't it? Like, why wouldn't you do it that way? You know, if people are enjoying a piece of content, why wouldn't you keep going with it? It makes loads of sense, right?
Yeah, I think you have to. I think you have to be at least a little bit reactive for social media, because there's so much that goes into it that you can't tell when you're making a video. You can make one and be like, oh, this is amazing, everyone's going to love it, and then it just falls completely flat. So you gotta ride the things that work. And that's kind of what happened. I ended up just riding this wave down into nicher and nicher content until I'm doing D&D and archery and pole all at once. And it's great because there's nobody else doing that. So although I'm not going to necessarily build the biggest audience in the world, I've got an audience that recognizes my content, and I think there's a lot of value in that as a
Well, you say that, but how many followers do you have now? Like 130, 40,000 something?
It's about 125,000 on Instagram, yeah.
I mean, well, how many on TikTok? Good question, actually.
About, what was it, 600 and something thousand?
Why is it? I've noticed one thing, like if someone's got like 100,000 on Instagram, they'll always have like a million or something on. Why is it so much harder to get followers on Instagram than it is on TikTok, do you think?
TikTok is a great, great app for getting those. When a video goes viral, it will go everywhere. So, and there's lots of them. You know, people on TikTok, I don't know if you're on it, but when you're on there, you'll watch a video for like 30 seconds, scroll. So you can get, in the course of like 5-10 minutes, you can get through a lot of content. And it's almost always that For You page, the stuff that's pushed at you by the algorithm. So there's a lot of opportunity to go viral. And if you get a video that works, a lot of people will see it. So it's a great one for building a platform. What it's terrible for is any kind of consistency, because people see it, you just have to press a button, you've followed, you're good, you're done. And then you continue scrolling your For You page. So you might not actually see anything that's specifically from people you follow. You might only ever see the algorithm stuff. So yeah, I get my biggest view counts often over there. I get the biggest bursts of followers over there. But then your next video could still be at the same level that all the ones before were. Whereas on Instagram, I think because your feed is a lot more driven by who you follow, unless you go searching for it, you don't see as much new stuff. So flip side is, as a content creator, not as many new people will see everything that you post. But if they do,
on
and if
TikTok,
they follow,
you mean?
No, on Instagram.
On Instagram, okay.
So when you post something, it will go, more of your followers will see it than on TikTok. But
Right.
I don't think it will always go to as many new people unless they're actively looking for sort of wider content.
And would you say that's a good thing, a bad thing? Like, why might that be a bad thing? And so, like for you,
I think you need both. If you want to have like a built up brand and things, because getting those new people in, getting new eyes on your content is what builds you a fan base and builds you a follower count and all of that, all those numbers that people love to look at. But they don't mean anything unless those same people will see your videos again and again.
right?
So the slightly more consistent side of things on Instagram is much better for building a community of fans. I see comments from the same people time and time again on my videos, and it's great. Those people are consistently seeing my stuff. I don't have that on TikTok. I might never see, I might get a comment from someone be like, I love your content, it's amazing. And then I will never ever see a comment from that person again over on TikTok.
Yeah, it's true actually. Now, because I'm terrible. I should just post on Instagram, on TikTok, and I never do. I find it intense enough to have to post for my Pole Lols page, my studio page, and on my page, all on Instagram, creating content. Like I find it like too much, anyways. But it wasn't. It was a New Year's resolution. It's April now. It was a New Year's resolution that I was going to start posting on it more. I find though, on TikTok, I feel like there's a slightly different vibe over there. I feel like they really want content rather than pole combos, which obviously I'm now kind of getting more into, creating actual like videos that are going to encourage people to engage with them and stuff, funny videos and stuff. Whereas before like the new year, I was only really posting like maybe a choreo, maybe a pole combo. Now, talking of this sort of like content creation, this is obviously really where you specialize, because your videos are very engaging in the sense that, like there was one that I saw where you were like, right, is it possible to shoot an apple whilst it's flying in the air, right? I think it was something like that. And then you were like, let's see if I can do it when I'm on a pole or something. And I remember seeing all these different things you were doing. Now, I'm assuming these must take you hours to do, because obviously I assume shooting an apple that's flying in the air is fucking really, really hard. So how long are you spending per video? What's average?
Very good question. Hours. Hours is a good answer.
For one
depends
video.
on the video itself, but I will usually spend for like a 1 minute video, I'll usually spend at least 2 hours filming. If it's tricks, sometimes that becomes less, because sometimes the trick just works first time. And the more I do it, the more likely it is to work first time. But I am terrible with the scripted bits. The bits where I'm talking to the camera, there will be so many retakes of me just saying the same sentence, going blah, 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 halfway through it.
Wow, I'm so shocked to hear you say that because you sound so natural, actually. That's one thing that I noticed was when I watch your content, you're very good at talking to the camera. So it's actually, this is the whole thing. This is why I always say to people, and why I always post about it, I'm like, guys, social media is fake. Don't believe everything you see on social media. Like, you know, these bits of content that you see that look effortless, they probably took hours to create. And that is such a good, you know, example. So would you say you've gotten better at speaking to the camera now? Like, what was it you didn't like about doing it? Did you just find it embarrassing, or?
It's not so much that. I've always been an introvert. I'm happy talking to myself. But maybe could have phrased that better. But the thing about the kind of content that I make is that I'm trying to condense what once in my head to be a 20-minute rant or ramble. I could talk about some of this stuff for days, and I'm trying to condense it into a video that I can get out that will be 1 minute long by the time I post it. So I'm treading and retreading things, trying to find the pattern of words, because sometimes you write something down and it doesn't sound right when you say it out loud. So it's trying to find the sentences that get as much information as possible for as few words as possible without sounding stupid. And I don't always hit the balance, but it can take quite a few tries and quite a few times of slightly different inflections here and there to try and not say stuff that's wrong. I think that's my main anxiety is and I will, and I mess up, but my degrees are in science, and when you're writing scientific stuff, you have to word incredibly carefully so that you're never ever saying anything that's misleading or wrong, unless you do popular science, in which case, by all means, go off and lie to people. But yeah, it's a thing where even now, as I'm talking, I tend to hesitate a lot because I want to make sure that the next few words that come out mean what I want them to mean.
Yeah, I wish I had that filter. that gets me in trouble a lot, actually. I just speak and I don't really think. I just say the words come into my brain and they come straight out of my mouth. There's no filter on them. I just say them, which in some ways has made me popular because people like the fact that I just say exactly what I think, but in other ways it's made me very unpopular. But I'm okay with it. I've decided to be okay with it because it is just one of those things. This is who I am as a person. It's fine. But yeah, it's funny because when I watch your videos, you are so good at articulating yourself. And it's funny what you said about, because when you write stuff down, because I, like when I'm doing my speaking videos, I write a rough idea of what I'm going to talk about. And I look at that, I think, that'll take me 30 seconds. Then I start speaking, I'm like, fucking hell, this is going to take me like, this is going to be an hour-long podcast. So you mentioned about doing a 1 minute kind of, a 1 minute like piece. Is 1 minute your maximum? You won't go over a minute. And what's your ideal time? Because I find like for content, the content that does the best is anything between like 0 and 20 seconds. What do you find with that?
I think the kind of content that I'm making tends to need to be a little bit longer. I've tried it's funny. It's almost like you were saying about combos, right? Over on TikTok and YouTube as well, to an extent. You can post just combos and they'll very rarely catch. They'll very rarely take. And it's the same with tricks. Like I can do some bonkers trick where I shoot an arrow at something flying through the air while jumping onto a pole. And unless I've done a load of preamble with the talking, it doesn't seem to do anything. So I tend to make videos that are a little bit longer. I try and like frame it in an educational way while also doing visual stuff, and people like to see what you're talking about when you do it. And my content tends to be about a minute because of the horrible intersection of different types of social media. Because on YouTube, the shorts can't be over a minute, and on TikTok, you can't earn any money from videos that are under a minute. So I'm like, okay, I need to have a video that is 1 minute and 1 second with 2 seconds of editable content in it, so that I can try and post roughly the same thing.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, so you're having to really repurpose your content in order to be able to use it on different platforms.
Yeah, because otherwise I'd go mad if I was trying to re-record everything separately for each platform. There's just not enough hours in the day.
How long do you spend per day editing?
Um, so well, just for the videos that I post weekly, there's probably maybe 2 days of work in total in terms of setting up, filming, planning, editing, and then getting everything ready to post. But then I also have other videos that I do for Patreon and things that kind of fill the time in between. And then sometimes I need to train and teach classes. So
Right. And you do
yeah, it's
the
probably two
teaching full
working days.
time, don't you? The teaching is your job.
Um, Probably not quite full time. I think it's kind of half and half with the social media now.
Nice.
So
So I want to talk to you about this, and I don't. Again, feel free to say that you don't want to answer any of these because some people like talking about it and others don't. But how can you make money from social media? Tell us. Do you mind telling us how you make money from social media?
yeah, absolutely. And again, I fell into all of this by accident in little dribs and drabs at a time. I never set out to make money from social media. And hats off to anybody that does that and manages it, because there's so much what to me has felt like luck involved. But at the moment, what I have is I'm kind of spread across multiple social media accounts. YouTube, if you get lots of views, like huge numbers of views, you can kind of get something approaching an income off YouTube, where they essentially pay you for people watching ads on your videos. So the ads will be there either way.
So is this why with YouTube, sometimes when I'm watching a YouTube video, there'll be loads of ads between because the creators get to choose where the ads go. Is that correct?
Not anymore.
Oh,
Used to. And you can turn off all the ads to your videos, but now they're just there, which is why sometimes they'll just cut someone off mid-sentence,
right.
because YouTube kind of just picks some. But yeah, so when people see the ads on your video, YouTube earns absolute bucket loads of money, and then they deign to give you a few pennies from that bucket. So if you get enough views, you can sort of start to get something from there. I also, on my longer videos, I occasionally will get a sponsor. Someone will be like, if I'm doing a 20-minute video, they'll be like, could you just, for 1 minute in the middle of this video, talk about our product? So I'll do that sometimes, and that's more consistent because you arrange the price in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, people will do that in different ways, but that only happens once people think that they'll be able to get something out of you talking about their product. And I try to go out of my way to find people that have products that are actually intersecting with my audience.
Of course, like you don't want to
Because that's
be
the big
like,
trap.
hey, there's this new hairdryer you can buy, but
Because that's the big trap, right? You're on Instagram, and Instagram is horrible for this. Like, so many predators out there that will just message into your DMs and be like, hi, we'd really like you to be an ambassador for our brand product, and you should message this completely unrelated account that's not the one we've messaged you on, and then buy a load of products from us. And
I get at least 5 of those days.
Yeah. It's slightly. I think I confused the automatic bots that are generating these, so it's slightly easier for me to spot those from the real ones, because they're usually trying to get me to flog women's sportswear because of the pole side of things, I think. So I'm like, yeah, I don't think you've seen my content.
Well, especially
yeah,
considering that you don't really wear like pole wear when you're doing this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so just generally to people, watch out for that. There are so many people that will pretend that they want to help you. I've had people offer to buy my account for like really puny amounts of money. They're not worth it. I've had people offer to find sponsors for me, and then when you read into their contract, they require you to like basically hand over the rights to all of your videos. So yeah. But aside from that, there's the money that comes in from that. There's an even smaller pot of money that comes in from TikTok for a similar thing, but they're even worse for the actual income from that. Every now and then I'll have a video that does really, really well on TikTok, and I'll look at the thing and be like, ooh, that actually might like half pay a bill. And then almost without fail, they'll go, actually, we found a community a guideline that you violated in that video. So we'll keep it up and we'll keep showing it to people so that they watch our social media. But you can't earn any money from that one. So there's them. They're lovely. They're wonderful. And
So
then
hold
I'm
on.
Patreon.
So even though they've made money from the video, they won't give you the money for it?
Yeah. Basically, I've come across that more and more where they don't actually take the video down. They just tell me that I can't earn any money from it.
Hey, what's up everyone? I just wanted to interrupt this episode with a quick little bit of information on my online business, The Pole Destroyers. If you haven't found out about it already, The Pole Destroyers is an online platform which provides strength and conditioning coaching for pole online from the comfort of your own home. And I can't tell you how many pole dancers I meet on a daily basis who aren't able to achieve some of their dream moves because they aren't strong enough. And now you can be by training from the comfort of your own home with this strength and conditioning program. Many people got a lot of success from my 31-day program, which you are able to access on demand, and you can also do live classes with me. But the thing that I love about this program is that each class has an individual theme. So we do all sorts of different themed classes. We have the Pole Destroyers quiz, we have choreo cardio, we have flip the coin, dice of doom. My cat Roxy teaches a class. Yes, cats can teach conditioning. You will be gobsmacked. It's just a really good, fun way to do conditioning at a really cost-effective price. So if that's something that you're interested in, please do go and check out thepoledestroyers.com or head to my Instagram at DanRosenPole and feel free to DM me with any questions you have. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast. So with that example of TikTok saying to you that, you know, we'll leave your recording up, but you're not allowed to make money from it, but they're allowed to make money from it. Do you ever think, well, fuck you, I'm just going to delete it then?
Sometimes. I think that's the biggest temptation. And one of the biggest things I've had to try and fight is whether it's with commenters or whether it's with the actual apps themselves, is the temptation to just get mad and rage quit and just not use that app anymore. But that's ultimately, now that this is kind of my job, it's just going to hurt me more than it hurts them. They're not going to lose anything from me not posting videos on there, but I'll lose some audience. And, you know, there's people that like my stuff out there. So if I stop posting on the app that they're watching on, then I feel like just because I'm not earning from it, then I feel like it doesn't really help anybody.
And I guess obviously you're making money in other ways as well. It's not, I mean, I assume you're not living off of the money you make from YouTube videos or from TikTok videos, right? So I assume your main source of income is, well, one, from teaching at a studio, but secondly, from your Patreon, am I correct?
Yeah, so Patreon's really nice because it's at least mostly consistent. You can build slowly and you're unlikely to just lose everybody in a day unless, I don't know, you go and kick a baby on camera or something like that. Which, by the way, don't do that if you're doing social media. It's one of the big no's.
Top tip for social media, everyone. Don't kick a child on social media. I'm going to write that down just in case, because that's something I might actually do.
Yeah. So yeah, Patreon's nice. It's reasonably consistent. It's hard to get big numbers on. And you've got to make a product that people want over there. You know, some people will join just because they're fans. They want to support your other content. But so I do pole tutorials, and there's a lot of artists or writers that use my videos for inspiration for their sort of characters or for drawings and art that they're doing. So I make art references as well. I'll do sort of static photos and short video clips of pole or archery or both.
And then they pay this Patreon fee to basically effectively use those photos, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So
how many patrons do you have?
I think I'll find out.
Are we talking like 10, 20, or are we talking like hundreds?
I think I've got about 100 paying. Yeah, I've got about 600 total, but there's the free level, which I just post sort of weekly updates and occasional content on. And then I've got about 100 paid members.
Is it enough to like live off of, or would you always have to be doing other stuff alongside it?
At the moment, because At the moment, it's not enough to live off. It's a supplement, and it means that combining that with everything else gives me something where I'm not afraid week to week that I'm not going to be able to pay the bills, or so I'm not having to search for another job. You could get it, and many people do get it to a point where it's not only an income, but a very comfortable one, but you need either huge numbers or you need to be offering something that people will pay a lot of money for. Which in some cases is content where you're not wearing any clothes. And in other cases might be people have a book or something like that, and they, or a clothing line, and then patrons over a certain level will get that product for free, essentially. So,
right. Yeah. Do you ever think about how you could diversify your... the only reason I ask this, because, and I hope anyone listening to this doesn't think, well, this is really intrusive. I want to get to the reason why I'm asking these questions, because lots of people think that these big names on social media are making loads and loads of money, and it's not always the case. Like, I make good money because I teach pole online, so that really helps. And I could, of course, live off of that if I wanted to, but I diversify like everyone does. But for yours, the reason I was asking is because what you do obviously is so specific. You do a bit of teaching, you do obviously a bit of the D&D stuff. Do you ever think of like other ways you could, I mean, is there anything D&D wise that you can create that you could then sell? Like, could you make your own sort of like game or something? Like, is there any other stuff that you'd love to do in the future that you think I'd love to do that because I think it'll actually create a good income, like a good future for family and stuff?
Maybe. One of the problems I have is that I am not business minded at all. I really struggle to think, oh, this would make lots of money, I should do this. What I tend to think is, I would really like to do this because I think it would be fun. Is there a way I can make some money? So I don't...
Which is not a bad way to be, can we just say that? I actually think that's a really lovely way to be. And in some ways, I wish I was more like that. I feel like I grew up with Jewish family who always instilled in me the value of money, and that you should always work hard and you should make as much money as you can. You should invest that money. Don't spunk your money on crap. And like, so I've always just had like my dad, who's like an entrepreneur, he's got his own business and stuff. So I've always been really very much inspired by that. So that's why I am the way I am. But I also don't know that it's the nicest way to be. Like, and actually that's changed a lot recently, because I feel like nowadays I'm a lot more like, my life will take me on the journey it's going to take me on. If that includes money, it does. If it doesn't, so long as I can pay my essentials and I'm not on the streets, I'm fine with it. I think I just worry about providing for like my family, I guess, like my dogs are so stupid. I'm like, what if I can't feed my dogs? But like, that sounds so stupid. But obviously, I guess it's the same as maybe you feel about your child. Like, you want to make sure you make enough money to feed your kid, right? That's a massive priority for you. And that sounds stupid. And I'm laughing because I know I can hear how it sounds. But, I'm like, well, I want to make sure I can afford to feed my dogs and that I can afford to pay my mortgage, right? And that's like always been a priority to me. I feel like it's a really hard balance to get between creating content that you want to create and also creating content that you know is going to eventually create income for you. What do you have like a 5-10 year plan of where you can see yourself? Like, do you think this is going to be something you're going to carry on with, but maybe you'll phase the pole side out and it will just stay with the archery and, D&D content? Or like,
that's kind of... that sort of creating a plan for the future is kind of where I'm at with content now. What I'm trying to do is build something, build a brand, build an identity that I can start diversifying into other things. Obviously, as a mediocre white man, I've always wanted to write a book. So that might be something I do at some point. I mean, I tell a lie, I have already written one, but it's rubbish, so I need to write a better one.
What was it about?
Oh, it's an urban fantasy magic setting. It's not.
Oh, okay. So it's not about it's not like about your life or anything. It's like it's very like D&D kind of inspired.
Nowhere near important enough to write anything about me. But I feel like if I wrote like a reasonably engaging fantasy story with some archery in it, that might be something that I can kind of piggyback a little bit from. But I have to be happy with it first. So that's a side thing.
For sure.
I'd also love if I can build up the can build up my credibility a bit through social media. I'd love to be able to do that, basically do the kind of consulting thing where somebody wants to put a really niche archery trick in a film and they're like, hey, there's this guy on the internet that does that. It's not a career.
It's funny. I watch your stuff though, and have you ever considered being a stunt double? I know it sounds really random, but like, have you ever looked into that?
I have looked into it actually. It's a really interesting thing. If you know the right people, right? If a director happens to know you and they can just be like, oh yeah, we want to put this specific thing, then they can go and find somebody with those skills and hire them or whatever. But if you want to be on essentially a list of stunt doubles, stunt actors, the British Stunt Register is a thing. And the entry requirements are incredible. And for good reason, because it's a very, very dangerous career.
And the only reason I know all this, so for anyone who's listening to this, what we're about to talk about, if you want to learn more about this, I actually interviewed a stunt double called Lucy Cork, and she's been on the podcast. She's a pole dancer. And she was telling us that you have to have like, is it 7 disciplines or something? She had to do like karate, like boxing, horse riding, scuba diving. She like, it's really funny because we were making a joke about it. Like one of her first gigs was that she had to ride a motorcycle into a like a fucking bin and fall off the bike. And like she'd learned all of these crazy skills, and that was like her first big gig that she got paid freaking good money for. Can we just say, like, she gets paid amazingly, and she now is like friends with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise bought her a fucking chopping board for her birthday or for Christmas or something, like this really bad, like, because she does all of the stunt doubles in all of the 007 stuff or whatever, that Mission Impossible, whatever he's in. And like, what a cool career, but fuck, it sounds so hard to get into. But and the only reason I mentioned it was because I was like, you are pretty like good at like picking stuff like that up. I mean, to pick pole up at the level you have is hard. Like, I can imagine if you did put your mind to learning scuba diving, learning all these other things you have to learn, I could imagine you'd probably do it. Is it something that you have considered then? Because you have just mentioned that you know about the register and stuff.
Yeah, I have looked into it a little bit. At the moment, it's a matter of time and life and stuff. Like,
of course,
I've got conflicting priorities because it's like you say with your dogs or with your kid or whatever. You want to provide for them. You want to build your career. You want to do stuff. You also want to have some time to spend with people because like my daughter we're comfortable. Okay, we're not going to lose the house tomorrow. Right. And although obviously we could always have a bigger house or nicer things, she loves to buy a cake and she loves a toy, but she, at the moment at the age she's at, she benefits so much more from like just going and doing something together. So
of course,
I don't want to spend all my time striving towards something and lose what I've already got.
I 100% agree with you. It's funny. Sorry guys, this has nothing to do with social media now, but we're kind of going off track a bit. But no, I love you saying that because I feel like this is kind of a bit of is it an epiphany? Is that the word I'm looking for? But like, it's kind of something like a revelation I've had recently where I've been like, money is great, but you know, it's no freaking good, like, if I don't get to have memories of the people who are around me, if I'm always working, you know? And whilst I'll always be busy and I'll always work, I think it's definitely become more of a priority. Super random story, but basically me and Mitch have decided that we're going to convert, like, a van and we're going to live van life a little bit, and we're going to, our holidays now, we're going to try and include the dogs, because I've always wanted a balance of being able to include my dogs on holidays, because they're getting older, and I want to be able to have some memories with my babies. And I said to Mitch, so how could we do both? And he was like, well, we could get passports for them and then drive with them to Europe. And I was like, what a great idea. So we're going to go down that route. It's just like something that will mean I'll get to spend more time with Mitch. I'll get to spend more time with the dogs. I'll be able to see my family more. And yeah, I don't know. It's just something that has kind of really come across my mind. I feel like I'm going through a bit of a midlife crisis with it. So I really kind of relate to what you're saying. And I think you're totally right. While she's at an age where spending time with you is more important than material things, I think it is really important. It changes your relationship that you have with your parents. I mean, I barely saw my dad when I was a kid, to be honest with you. I still have a great relationship with him, but would it have been better if I spent loads of time with him? Probably. Yeah. But yeah, so I love that you're doing that. I think that's a really nice thing. So yeah, definitely don't doubt doing that, because I definitely think you've chosen the absolute right thing to do. Sorry everyone, back to social media. Going back to social media, so you created this very niche thing that you decided to do. What would you say to people who want to build up their social media and they want to do it as a career and they want to do what you've done? What would you say to them? What would your main bits of advice be?
Okay. Covered some of these a little bit earlier, but essentially the main things that I've found that have helped me are, one, and this has been the most important one, it may vary for other people, is to do something that you want to do. So much of social media, and particularly now as we get more into an AI generated world, is going to be about showing your own authenticity, showing that you're not just running something that's AI generated. That's going to make you stand out. And you got to enjoy it. You can't be miserable. Nobody wants to watch someone be miserable about something. Well, some people do, but enjoy it. It's better for you. It's better for your audience. It creates a much healthier online presence. After that, you got to be consistent. I was posting a lot, but nothing really started building regular traction as much as being like, okay, I will post every weekend at least one video, and then I can post other stuff as well. But people know what to expect. They know where to find you. You don't lose all your followers because they've not seen any videos for 3 months and they've gone on to other people now. So being consistent with it super, super helps. And then you got to be reactive. It sounds like those two contradict each other. You gotta see what works, see what doesn't, learn from it. And there's a big difference, and it's a tricky one to hit, between being reactive and being superstitious. Because the algorithm is big and confusing, and nobody really understands how any social media algorithm works. It's very easy to go, well, actually, this one did better when I posted it at 3:30 on a Saturday immediately after taking a shower. And you feel like you have to do that all the time. And you've got to try and, through a bit of trial and error, find what actually makes a difference. Is it time of day? Is it day of the week? Is it actually just what you did in the first 2 seconds of the video?
Right.
Which, incidentally, what you do in the first 2 seconds of the video is probably the most important part of any video.
I was just about to pick you up on saying that. Is that something that you prioritize? Do you specifically, when you're writing out what you want to do in this 1 minute video, do you think, right, what's going to be my like catch? What's going to be the thing that's going to really pull people in?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I really try to do. I don't always get it, but I try to think, right, what can I be doing and what can I be saying in that first 2 seconds, so that people.
There was one you did. And it went viral, actually. I remember seeing loads of comments on it. It was about the respecting the stripper roots. And I think your first, it must have been 10, 15 seconds, you did the like backflip and then you changed into like you were half naked and stuff. And I was like, very, very clever. Like, what a great way to really catch someone's attention. It's already funny, actually, because I keep getting this advert show up on my Instagram from a guy I follow who does really cool transition videos. And he actually does a course about how to create, he calls it something, but it's like how to create a reel where at the beginning it's going to pull people in and it's going to keep them there. And I was like, actually, I'm tempted to maybe just buy it when he does a sale on it next, because little things like that I think are super important to then keep people watching your full video for sure. So it was really interesting to know that you do focus on that. Do you focus on, because again, it was something you mentioned, times. You mentioned about times. You know, you said like, oh, was it because I posted it after I was on the toilet at 6 a.m. or whatever? You know, do you have times that you think work better than others? Because this is something we've discussed on the podcast with every guest so far. And it's really undecided, it seems. Like some people do like to post at the same time, and some people think it doesn't really matter. What do you think?
I think it depends on your content and your audience. I always try and post in the evenings. It doesn't have to be a specific time, but I try to post in the evenings because I have a lot of followers who are in the US and quite a few who are in the UK. So I'm trying to hit that time where most of my followers will be awake when the video comes out.
Right.
Because if I post in the morning, the US followers are asleep. And if I try to post when US followers are at their peak time in the evening, I will be asleep. So, yeah.
Right. See, Charlotte Robertson was saying that she always just posts in the morning and she feels like it always works. And like, you know, she doesn't notice really much of a difference. And It makes me wonder, is there a correlation between that and who your main following is? And actually, I'd love to now go back and ask her and be like, is your main following from Europe? Because if it is, that would make a lot of sense. But if she has a lot of US followers, it then doesn't really make sense, because actually, like we were saying, if these US people are still seeing her content, I guess it doesn't really matter. And this is the annoying thing about social media. So we're never going to know, because there is no formula. It literally is. Do you feel like that? It's just a bit of potluck sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I said about the superstition versus finding out what works, you never really know. You've just got to try and think, is this a reasonable thing to be expecting? And then every now and then give it a little test, give it a little change. So I'm trying not to get stuck in a pattern where I feel like because I could do that. I could be like, oh, I have to post at 6:30 exactly on the dot every Sunday, otherwise it won't do anything. And you've got to have a little bit of flexibility.
Do you post every day?
Oh no! I post once a week at minimum.
What's wow? Oh, okay. So, well, tell me more about that, because I had just assumed from what we were talking about that you do post every day. So, how many times a week do you post? What's your average?
So public posts, I will only really tend to do 1 or 2 a week. I do about three to four Patreon posts a week on each membership. Some of them overlap, but yeah, I really don't, because what I make puts so much effort into it.
Because I was thinking that, I was like, wow, if you're doing like 2 hours of content creation, just content creation, and then all the editing and the posting every day, do you ever think about posting more often to get your following higher? And the only reason I say this, because again, it's one of those things that a lot of people talk about when it comes to social media: consistency, posting regularly. Becky Dunn talks about it a lot. She's literally, for the last however many years, she's posted every day without fail. She will post. It doesn't have to be something of our best content, maybe. It might even be something repurposed, but she will post every day, because she found that the consistency meant that the algorithm was almost, what's it called? Rewarding her for posting regularly. Have you ever tried posting more regularly and noticed a difference?
I used to post very regularly, but what I found was I wasn't able to regularly make videos that kind of met the same standards as maybe they weren't the same type of video, basically. And I found that when I did that, I was still only getting really any engagement from the ones that were in that category of hitting all the little beats of a bit of education and a bit of excitement and all of that stuff. So even though I was posting other stuff in between, I might as well not have been for me. But I think that's a difference in style of content and how pretty you are and all of that other stuff that affects whether people just want to see your face.
Right, how pretty you are. Well, I'm bringing it up now because there's someone I follow. I don't know whether you follow him, but his name's A Guy and a Golden, right? And I always use him as an example because he's got like 3.9 million followers, right? But he as well creates content that would have taken a long time to create, because he basically does videos with his golden retriever, right? But these videos are not just like a cute little like video of him filming him. This dog is an actor, darling, okay? This dog is an actor. This dog does full scenes. Like, I'm telling you, it's crazy. They've got another dog as well they use a lot. Now, don't get me wrong, every now and then he'll do like videos where maybe they've been a little bit easier to make or whatever. It's been like, he does this thing called Teddy Tuesdays where he takes his dog Teddy out for like a day out and stuff, and he'll just put little clips all together and he'll talk over it. But then there's days where he creates the funny videos, and the funny videos are the ones that it must take him hours to create, minimum of 3 hours per video. So I'm just looking, he posted 16 hours ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 5, yes, he posts quite regularly, but I'm assuming he must make loads and loads of money because he is working with a lot of brands. He has got, like I said, 3.9 million followers. It's a ridiculous amount of followers. But a lot of the stuff that he does post, I notice he also reposts a lot of stuff. But I've noticed so he was actually a bad example because he does post quite regularly. Some of it will be repost, but I noticed that people whose content clearly takes them a longer period of time, they don't post as often. Do you follow it was like Owl Kitty or something? Have you heard of him? Owl, I think it's Owl Kitty. And he's actually, yeah, so Owl Kitty, right? 1.2 million followers. And it's basically this guy who's got a green screen. He does all these like things with his cat, and he basically like creates scenes from movies, and then he'll replace an actor with his cat. It's so clever. Like everyone, if you're listening to this, go and look up Owl Kitty. So Owl_Kitty.
I need to check this out.
And the videos are nuts, but he doesn't post very often. He'll literally, like the Barbie movie came out. That was the last one that he did. But these videos, he does then he does what you do. He'll do like a YouTube video about it and stuff. And it will literally be, it's taken them hours and hours and hours to do. But he's still got a large following because the quality of what he's doing is so much higher. So like, do you find like that with yours?
Yeah, like that's what I'm trying to hit. Really, I wanna be trying to provide the same level of quality and just yeah. I want my content to feel like it all was produced by the same person under the same. Again, I'm using too many. Brand is the word that's coming to my mind, but I'm trying to create like a footprint, a style of content that I can reasonably regularly come back to, that people watch and go, yeah, okay, I know what to expect from this guy.
Which is good. Do you get a lot of like influencer sort of work through your social media work? Because obviously you've got a large following, and you were mentioning that some brands do reach out to you. Do you do a lot of influencer work? Because one of the things when you mentioned it, and you said that some people ask you to do ads on your YouTube videos. Do you mind if I ask, like, what sort of price should someone be charging for that sort of stuff?
The price is so variable. It depends on what the niche is. It depends on how many followers you've got, and it depends on what your regular view count is on your videos. So. Yeah, I do about one a month, I think, of these things.
Right.
And so for me, it's for the insert in a YouTube video, it's about $500 because everyone works in US
it's really
money.
decent.
Yeah, it's not nothing. Right. It's not nothing at all. But I have about 700,000 followers on YouTube, so it's hitting a fairly big audience.
See, I would even go to say actually, and I only say this now because I was chatting to an influencer who's a pole dancer as well called Tara Margulies, and we did an episode with her. You know, she was saying like she gets paid like thousands by some brands, depending on how big the business is. She's like, but it varies so much. You know, and I think, so you said $500 for a 1 minute advert, is it?
Yeah.
And that's about average, you'd say?
Yeah, that's sometimes someone won't stretch to that, and sometimes people will go a little bit further, usually because they want something extra or they want a shorter timeline or something like that. But yeah.
Which I think is still, it's funny though, because I listen to that and I say like, I think that's a really good amount. But I know that if Tara found out that you had 700,000 followers and you told her you were charging 500, she'd probably be like, why are you only charging 500? That's crazy. Like, where do you find the prices out? Like, what did you do to find out what the correct price to charge would be?
Well, I know another guy who does D&D content over on YouTube, and he recommended an agency. So they do a lot of the work in sort of setting the prices and reaching out to people and things like that. And they're great. They're really, honestly, it saves me so much work. And they take a 20% flat cut from it. So it's in their interest to try and get a decent price, but also they're not wanting to price me out of the market. And it depends on the companies, I guess, because the kind of things that I'm advertising it's mostly for my nerdy fans. They're not big, expensive products, and they're not necessarily things someone's going to buy 30 of.
Right.
So it has to have a balance in value.
Well, it is that whole thing of like, you know, if Nike are contacting you, you know what they can afford, right? So it's that whole thing of, as well, if this is a small business, maybe you're helping a nice small company out. So that's actually quite nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many things about social media that I feel like I could talk to you about, but we've kind of hit time. I just wanted you to, can you let everyone know where they can kind of like check you out, where they can find out a little bit more about you? Yeah, just let me know where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on YouTube as Blumineck, Blumineck, and it's the same username for Instagram and TikTok and Tumblr, if anybody's still over there, which apparently some people are.
Fair enough. Well, everyone, go make sure you check out David's page. He does some really cool, interesting content. And if you're looking for some ideas on things that you can do a little bit differently with your page, he is a great source of inspiration. Your posts definitely have inspired my posts before. So I really love the way you're kind of pushing your own boundaries with your content. So please keep doing it. I'm intrigued to see what you do next. But yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, David. I hope I'll get to see you again soon.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
See you.
Bye.
Bye. Hey Hans, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope that you learned something from it. Until next time, bye.
That was all the tea that you can get this week. Join me next time right here. It's the Weekly Tea.